Okay, good morning. What did we talk about last time? You know what we did? Seems like a long time ago. We made ramen noodles, and what else did we make? S'mores, right? And so we looked at different parts of the process and how we go about making the process. And remember, what were the goals of supply chain? In chapter 1. Why do we have supply chains? Yeah. Create value, right? How do we create value from the supply chain perspective? How do we create value? What was the definition of value? Value equals, did we talk about this here? So how do you get revenue? Or sorry, how do you get profit? It's revenue minus cost, right? So value is the benefit. Right? And in the supply chain, what are we trying to do with the value equation? How do we get more benefit? What are we trying to focus on? Well, in revenue, how do I get more revenue? I sell more things. Who does that? What department? Is encouraged to sell more things? Marketing and sales, right? Marketing and sales, that's how they get paid. Usually marketing and sales people get paid by commission. Why commission? Because the more you sell, the more money you make. There's an incentive. Supply chains are the other side. What are you trying to do? So if you're not increasing revenue, you're reducing cost. So that's what we're trying to do. Look at the process, and based on the process, what steps can we get rid of? So I'm going to put down 4 categories here. Look at each step of the process and ask yourself, is this step adding value? If it is, keep it. It's important. You want to add value. You want to get rid of the cost. Is it something that your customer will value? Here's the second one. It's something that's necessary, but probably is not adding a whole lot of value. What's an example? Going to the movie theater, and when you go into the restroom, having a clean restroom is value add. Seeing that pyramid of toilet paper underneath the sink, it's extra just in case. It's probably not it probably is not adding value, but it's necessary in case they run out of toilet paper in some stall, and it's there immediately. Somebody can take it and bring it to the stall with them. And so it's necessary, but not necessarily adding value. Here's the third one. Is it really adding value or not? You know, I'm not sure. Just give me time. Let me think about it. Back to a movie theater example, the person that tears your tickets. Is that needed? I always joke that if a person that tears your tickets and they tell you where your theater is, it's the 3rd theater on your right. Has anyone ever said, oh, thank God, I didn't know where the theater was going to be. I appreciate that. It's the 3rd one on the right. No, because you're looking at it as soon as you come into the movie theater too. So you're like, oh, theater number 6. And then you start looking around, okay, which side is 6? This side or this side? And then I'll figure it out when I walk down that way. All right, so it's more of a question mark. I don't know. Or the last one. It just generates waste. It's just a waste of time, or it's a waste of effort. I don't need a waste of labor. I don't need the person there to do that. Until recently, we used to have somebody at the desk that you want to buy a movie ticket from. And they'd say, what do you want to see? Or they really don't say it. They just kind of stand there, don't they? It's like, oh. And so you have to initiate conversation, or they say hi or whatever, and that starts the conversation. And it's your job to say, I would like 2 tickets for this show, usually this show time. So you see it, and now we don't even do that. How do you get tickets now for the movie theater? You go online. You just buy them and they're there, and you can see what seats are filled and which ones are not, which shows are going to be full and which ones aren't. So I mean, you can just do it online. So do you need a person there to receive, hey, do you want to go see this movie? Probably not. You could probably just go to the kiosk that's there, or you can just buy them online. And so is that waste generating, have a person standing there? In some places it's necessary but not value added. And do you see how subjective this is? A lot of different people have different perspectives on what's needed and what's not needed. Your job is to go through the process and figure out what we need to do, what we need to keep, what we need to not keep. So all of this is part of this waste generating or value added process. And we're going to go through every single step of the process, every single step of s'mores, every single step of ramen noodles, and say what should we keep and what should we not. Here's another perspective of it. Different algorithm, same kind of thing. We actually can map the process. So, well, here for the sake of the camera, I'm going to move this over here. We're going to map the process. Every time there's an operation, I'm going to put in a circle. So some action happens, some activity happens, I'm just going to put a circle down. Every time something moves, I'm going to put an arrow. Every time we inspect something, we take a look at something and just see what it looks like. Does it look like it's about right? I'm going to put a square. Sometimes it's a triangle, an upside down triangle, or a triangle. Doesn't matter, it's up to you. If there's a delay, for whatever reason, I'm going to put the big letter D, or like a half circle. Anytime there's storage, something's going to go into storage, I'm going to put an upside down triangle. Now again, I've seen texts where they change these, the inspection and the storage. So really the method is up to you. What you do is go through every step of the process and see where you can get rid of some things, get rid of some waste. For example, let's look at our s'mores process. What was the first thing to do? We're going to go out and we're going to get ingredients, right? Then we have three processes. We have make sure everything looks okay. We've got a graham cracker process, we've got a marshmallow process, and a chocolate process. So the first thing we do is we take the chocolate and break it apart into the appropriate pieces the right way, right? And then here we take the graham cracker and we break that apart the right way. Then for the marshmallow, what do we need to do? Well, we need to start a fire. There's an action. Get the fire going. It'll take a little bit of time. And now we take this and actually moving into different areas. We start the fire going, and then we take the poker, we put the marshmallow on the poker, and then we start taking the poker and cook it the right way. And then when we're done, we put them together, the three pieces together, right? But what's happening to the graham cracker and the chocolate at this point while we're cooking the marshmallow? Nothing. They just kind of sit there, right? So we'll say that these are delays. Now, you look at your process, where do you start reducing costs? What do you look for? You look for the delays. You say, how do I get rid of these delays? Because it's just wasting resources, wasting time, wasting space, etc. Do I need to have the chocolate out? Do I need to have the graham cracker out? The graham cracker starts to get a little stale the longer it sits out. Now, obviously, a minute is going to be different than an hour. The chocolate, if you're outside with bugs like chocolate, is there a good chance somebody else could eat the chocolate because they just see it? I have a 2-year-old. That's very probable in my case. Right? So you get rid of those delays. The more we can get rid of those delays, the more we can save time and energy and people in the process. That's cost. The more you can reduce the cost, the more the profit you get. Increases the value. Does that make sense? Let me just put a lot of this here. I want to make sure I've got everything. So where do you start the process? If we're going to start reducing the process, we can either do this, or we can do this, or we can start looking at the process itself and figure out what is the process now. Now, when you work, especially when it's a very routine job, you're going to have something called work instructions, which is how do you do this? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And every time you make a hamburger at McDonald's, every time you meet somebody at the drive-through, whatever it is, there's a step and then a step and then a step. It continues to go. So if we're going to change the process, where do we start? Now there's 4 types of things you can do, ways you can do this. There we go. We start with the process as it's written. Look to see the process as it's there. It's written down. That's where we should start because that's what's known for everybody. We write down processes. Why? Why do we write down a process? Why did we make the whole s'mores thing last Wednesday? What was the point of that? They need to waste class time. No. What was the reason for writing down the process? Why did we write down a process? Hey, yes. We write down the process as it's written because what did it generate? It generated conversation, right? We started talking as a group together, how do you make s'mores? And we found there are different ways to do it. I asked my leadership and my business 100 class, have you ever put chocolate inside a marshmallow before for s'mores? And one person said, no, but that sounds like an awesome idea. Right? So now we start generating ideas, start getting concepts. What makes the most sense? Maybe it's faster to do it that way. Maybe it gives a little bit less delay for the chocolate. So we've got this idea, it starts getting conversation, it starts seeing different people's perspectives. There's a term called collaboration. That's what we were doing. We're collaborating on how we make ramen noodles and how we make s'mores. And that starts getting ideas across. This is how we can reduce waste. I don't do that. Do you do that? I didn't know you did that. I want to start talking to them. Right? So it generates conversation is one thing. The other reason we do work instructions is why? People who are new, you want to have a consistent process, good quality every time. So you microwave it for 3 minutes, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, etc. People kind of did their own thing. You'd have different quality. But now we have everybody doing consistent quality because they follow the work instructions that are written down. So here comes Siobhan. She's brand new to the company. She has to do new training on how to make s'mores for our company. How much time should she microwave the marshmallow? How should she make s'mores? She's a new camp counselor. Right? So now that same quality is there, and they learn just by reading. It's not talking to an individual. We got to find the s'mores expert on camp. No, they just pick up the work instructions and go. That's cool. Oh, great. Wow, she already knows that. And so we have that there. So what we're doing is we're starting to get some consistency. But in addition to the consistency, we're starting to see that it helps new people or people from outside the organization learn what we do. So the first place we can look is where the process is written. Another way we can do this is look at the process as it is. This is physically having somebody with an iPad walking around the process and observing what people do. Because not everybody does everything the same way. Some people have something called tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is this information that people know that's not easy to share. It might be easy just to converse with somebody and say, hey, there is this, but you may not, because it just seems so intuitive to you. You don't think otherwise. And somebody else could look at you and say, what are you doing with that? Or how did you do that? I have a friend of mine that does the whole TikTok thing where she learned how to fold a shirt just by turning it this way. And somebody else could look at them like, how did you know to do that? Well, I learned it. Show me how you do that. Right? And it takes a few tries, but you eventually get the shuffling a deck of cards. Same kind of thing. The riffle shuffle. kind of get it. Not everybody can do that. So you start to learn from other people how you do that. Tacit knowledge is there. Here's another example of tacit knowledge. What aisle are the spices in at Meyer? But you kind of just know. Like once you're in the store, you're like, oh yeah, it's toward the back of the store. So I just kind of go there. That's tacit knowledge. That's easy to confer with somebody else, but it's something you just kind of know. Not everybody else does. So somebody who's new coming into that Meyer is going to be like, where are the spices? I did this yesterday when I was looking for something. I was in a new location. I'm like, everything's different. So it took a little bit more time to figure it out. Explicit knowledge is the other side. Explicit knowledge is this. Can I write this down? Can I share this with everybody? And so it's there so everybody can see it. And the challenge for a lot of organizations is, how do you take the tacit knowledge and make it explicit? That's a challenge. Because if you make it explicit, then all the benefits that people go through and all the little things people do, you could probably have a hyper-efficient organization. Save costs, build the supply chain. So that's pretty awesome. But then how do you do it? Because not everything is really easy to understand. Not everything's intuitive. So anyway, the process as it is another way. Take a look at the processes that should exist. How should this process exist? If I had to ask, I had to poll you, how do you think this should work? You say, oh, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do this. We don't need to get this stuff. We can get it real time. Or you know what? This is a waste of time. Talk about mail technology right now with the election coming up and mail-in ballots and how the government has shut down so many mail sorters and how that's a big deal, especially with the election coming up. And it seems kind of silly when you think about it, that technology is from the 1990s. Part of that needs to be obsoleted. I mean, look at the stuff they do in factories now. Usually you'd have to go to the bin in the warehouse and get something, find out where it was, get it, put it in your box before it would ship to Amazon, would ship it to a customer. Now, technology is so advanced, the warehouse comes to you. The different shelves literally are on robots and they come to you. You don't have to move. So the technology is very different. Imagine we could do that with mail, right? You don't really have to do a whole lot. Just kind of pick something up and put it in the bin, or pick something out of the bin and put it in your bag or whatever it is. So we have the processes that should exist. What should we be doing? And then finally, we have process. Should I put was? Hold on a second. Let me look it up. I might get the wording correct, so forgive me for just a moment. So of these three, where do you start? Where do you begin looking at a process to improve it? The process is people think it exists. So not necessarily what should happen in the future, but rather what do people think they're doing right now? So asking them individually. So where do we start looking at the process? How do we evaluate? Well, it's not so bad. Where did we start over here? Or over here? Do we look at how the process is written? Gives me an opportunity to use a red marker. Psychologically, you guys hate red markers. from high school. Apparently, that's how the other grade papers are read. So we try not to use them. True story. So we don't write it as written. Right? Should we look at processes people as it should exist to an expert? Maybe. How about the way people think it exists? No. So where do we go? Because people are going to have different opinions. So the process of what people are actually doing now. Maybe there are shortcuts that are being done that we don't know about. Maybe there are problems that are going on that we don't know about. We often look at the process as it exists right now. And that's what we did with our map. How are we measuring this process right now? What are we doing for our s'mores right now? It seems intuitive. But when you're actually starting this whole change process, change management thing, it is not. It's pretty challenging. Okay. I see I got a whole bunch of stuff now that I need to talk about. Okay, so we got all this. Any questions on any of this material so far? How do you feel about it? Did you take a quiz on it? For those that took a quiz last week, how hard was it? Pretty straightforward. I mean, maybe one had one question, I don't know, had two answers, and I kind of went with one. That's about it. I mean, that's about how hard this is. So based on this, if I said, I need you to draw out the process for making ramen noodles, could you do it? With the circle and the square and the triangle, and the rectangle, the arrow. That's about how hard this is. All right, a few terms before we continue on. How long does it take you to wake up in the morning? How long does it take you to wake up in the morning? So if we actually had to wake up, take time to wake up, how long would that take? Wake up, well, let's see, there's a question. So right now, wake up and get out of bed, does it mean when I drink coffee? Was it when I feel awake? Is it when I get in a car? Or if I'm walking across campus? Like, what do you mean by wake up? All right, well, let's take the first thing you do. What's the first thing you do when you get up? Sorry?
Check my phone.
Check your phone. How long does that take? 5 minutes. You guys, do I have any really long phone checkers here? 15, 20 minutes. You're like, let's see Facebook. Let's look at TikTok real quick, which is now an Oracle company. It's kind of strange. All right, so you start looking at things about 5 to 10 minutes, somewhere in there. Calendar. What's next? Check your phone. What? Get dressed. You're gonna say it because it's a reality, right? At some point we do this. The dental hygiene is 2 minutes. Right, so all these are just different processes. We can make our way to the kitchen. If you eat breakfast, maybe this is 5 to 10 minutes. Right? All these things, there are different steps of the process. Now you may do them differently, different order. You may have other things in here too. Like I have dogs, I gotta take the dogs outside. Right? So I have to take medicine for my arm. Like all those little things that are part of that process. This here is how long it takes to do each step of the process. So this has a term. We call it right. Hold on a sec. Maybe it makes sense to show this. So this is called the cycle time. So this is the cycle time. This is the cycle time. And so on and so forth. Each one of these is cycle time. And the goal, if we're trying to measure how efficient we are, is we want to reduce our cycle time. I'm not going to try to put the PowerPoint up, but it's on the PowerPoint. So our cycle times are there. The whole thing, the process of getting ready in the morning is about 30 minutes. This is called my flow time. The time it takes for a unit to go through the process. The unit is you. How long does it take you to wake up in the morning? 30 minutes. You put on makeup. If you do makeup, you do your hair. That's part of the process. Finding the right outfit. If you haven't done that last night, same thing. It's part of the process. So we have cycle times, and we have all the cycle times added up to meet the flow time. If you reduce the cycle time, you reduce the flow time. And we're trying to save costs in a process. So how do we do that? Reduce the cycle times. Reducing just one can save a lot of time. Reducing multiple save a lot of time. Okay. Let's change the topic a little bit. Let's not do the morning anymore. But in our mornings, we have a cycle time and we have a flow time. In our given process, let's change it just a little. Let's go back to our s'mores. How long does it take to cycle time to break apart graham crackers? How long does it take to break apart graham crackers? A second? 2 seconds? Oh, GC. Looks like 2 seconds. And then to break the chocolate. And then cook the marshmallow. How long does it take to cook the marshmallow? Well, let's say we're going to get it a nice golden brown. That seems to be the popular solution. So how long does it take to cook those to be a golden brown? A minute? 2 minutes? A minute 30? Say 90 seconds. How do we reduce that? How do we reduce our cycle time for the marshmallow? Hotter fire. What else could we do? Say again? Closer to the fire. There's 2 in there. Closer to the fire. What else? Settle for less good, so we'll say lower quality. That's going to be important. Value is based upon expectation. So it's benefit over cost. If the benefit outweighs the cost, you will find value in it. But there's expectation. What is the expectation of a product? Let's say, I don't know, a cereal brand from a Meijer or a Kroger versus Dollar Tree. Cost is only $1, right? So when I get a small little box that's got some cereal in it, maybe it's a brand name, but you know, it doesn't go as far. But you got it from the dollar store. The cost is $1. So there's an expectation part to it too. Are you willing to go with lower quality marshmallows, cooked marshmallows? What if it's cheaper? Yes or no? So there's an expectation component to it too. And just know that we're going to talk about that in the next chapter. Just realize that that's there. Right? People are willing to buy the it's okay almost marshmallows and be just fine because you don't taste the difference in the s'mores. What else could we do to reduce the time? Any other ideas? Got a hotter fire, closer to the fire, or lower quality. Anything else? Does it make sense to cook 2 at a time? So I can get more throughput? Okay, multiple marshmallows. Anything else? So the less time we have, the more capacity, or hopefully the more capacity we can have for each step. Let's say our s'mores process runs for 8 hours a day. Because we're mass producing s'mores. Can you imagine? You'd be tired of marshmallows. Right? The number one problem I know from people that worked at Subway is that I smell like a sandwich at the end of the day, 8 hours of making sandwiches, right? So if you're making s'mores, the lower time we have, the lower flow time, the more we can make. The amount that we can make per step in the process in a given day is called the capacity. Capacity is how many you can make in a day. If I look at the overall process, how many s'mores can I make in a day? Versus if I'm not making the overall process, I'm looking at the individual pieces, individual steps. Each step, how many can I make a day? How many pieces of chocolate can I break? How many graham crackers can I break? How many different s'mores, marshmallows can I cook? All of those are different capacities. And here's another way to look at things. Take this. The process. When I made this example up a while ago, I was watching an episode of Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. And he was showing how hard and how difficult it is to shear sheep. As a matter of fact, in New Zealand, they have an annual competition on how fast people can shear sheep. And the fastest time right now, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, is 35 seconds. So shearing an entire sheep. And there's actually a video on YouTube you can watch of a guy going through the analysis and then actually shearing a sheep in 37 seconds. Right? So let's say this is our sheep shearing process. Step A, we get the sheep from the field and we tag them. It's a little tag you put in their ears, letting them know that they are going to be sheared on this given day. So here's their time allotment. Number two, getting those sheep and then actually collecting them and then giving them like sheep Dramamine so they don't get scared. So you're prepping the sheep, you're kind of drugging the sheep. Step three, actually shearing the sheep. So actually cutting them down, cutting the hair off. And then step four, bagging the wool. And the wool has two types, there's dark wool and light wool. Light wool is the one that kind of goes into wool clothing. Dark wool is used for insulation. So you have to separate the wool types when you're doing that. This is our sheep shearing process. The numbers underneath are how many sheep we can do a day in a 12-hour day. So here we can tag 300 sheep a day. Here we can drug, if you will, 325 sheep a day. Here we can shear 250 sheep a day. Here we can bag and sort the wool, 400 bags a day. Now, one way to improve the process is to look for those delays, remember? So if we're going to look for the delays and eliminate them, where are the delays here? You are only, from a capacity perspective, you are only as good as your weakest link, as your weakest capacity. So how many sheep can we process a day through this entire process? How many? I'm only as good as my weakest link. 250, right, because this is the smallest number here. This is called bottleneck. I assume you've heard this term before. A bottleneck and lots of traffic all merging together into one lane on the highway or on the road because of construction. There's a bottleneck. Where's the bottleneck? It's where everybody's merging. It slows everything down. Why is this true? This is true. I'll finish this up right here. We'll continue on Wednesday. Why is this true? Because I can process 300 sheep. I can actually drug more sheep than I can process. But I can't shear more sheep than I have. I can only shear 250 a day, which means there are 75 sheep here that aren't going to get sheared today because I can only do 250. This person's waiting because they can bag 400 bags of wool, but I can only process 250 sheep. I can only shear them, and that's it. So that's pretty good, right? Now, so how do I improve the process? Improve the capacity. Right? Get another person to shear as well, or get better shears. Now where's the bottleneck? I'm tagging the sheep. Need to get more people. Now where's the bottleneck? Now where's the bottleneck? Well, it's either C or D. You see how the bottleneck moves every time we improve the process? So every time you always make more work for yourself. What if they were all the same? They were all 450. Where's the bottleneck? Everywhere. I can always improve the process. So I keep going. And I'll stop there. We'll continue again on Wednesday.